Let's talk a little bit about COVID now and the possible third wave. When and how will it hit us? Just how grave can it be? And all of this is important because that will decide to what extent do we have to prepare ourselves. Already the states and the union government are preparing with better planning, better infrastructure, a more streamlined version, hopefully, of distribution of medicines, of oxygen supply and whatnot. Already, we are trying to step up on our vaccination as much as we can to provide some protection to people as that wave hits us. But we are also unlocking, and we are unlocking very quickly. And we are actually looking at a lot of visuals of crowding and COVID inappropriate behavior coming through. It seems already many people have already forgotten what happened during the second wave. The trauma, the pain, the loss that we saw during second wave, it seems we've forgotten. And people are coming out with this vengeance, revenge travel, as many are also calling it. But not just restricted to travel to another town or a vacation destination in the mountains or next to a beach. Even within the cities and towns, we're seeing when people get out, go to the markets, they don't even bother wearing a mask. When this is a situation, how do we plan and when do we expect the third wave to hit us? For example, many experts are looking into it. For example, this SBI, the State Bank of India, in fact, came out with a report because obviously, even in terms of a business scenario, everybody wants to know what happened next when it comes to the pandemic. So this SBI report has predicted, based on historical trends and all of the data available, they've used a model where they are saying that the cases can begin to rise once again from mid-August and will peak about a month later, somewhere in September. So the cases will begin to go up in a clear manner by mid of August or in the second half of August, and the third wave will probably peak around mid-September. They're also looking at the data which is available, referring to what's happened across the world. For example, globally, the third wave, they say on an average, the peak was 1.7 times more than the second wave peak. They've also looked at the third wave that's taken place in Japan, in US, and in other parts. This is just one of the examples of many of these studies that are now emerging. The government itself will be looking at some of the studies and what scientists, based on mathematical projections and what the rest of the world has shown, do say. But obviously, keep in mind that all of this is independent of us following the rules and to what extent we follow the rules and how the virus itself evolves, how the virus mutates. Delta variant became a big challenge. Now we're studying what Delta plus variant really does and how it may go about. Tonight, trending on social media is the Lambda variant now, which seems to have found itself or has been detected in UK, just as UK is planning to open up again. So what do we expect? Let's ask the experts. Professor Vidyasagar is a professor at the Indian Institute of Technology in Hyderabad, joining us this evening. Dr. Vinita Bal, scientist and guest faculty at LICR in Pune. Dr. Prabhat Jha, leading epidemiologist and a university professor and chair in global health and epidemiology, joins us this evening from Toronto, Canada. Good evening to all three of you. Dr. Vidyasagar, I want to come across to you first. It's been a while since we had a conversation. That time we were in the middle of the second wave and perhaps close to that peak, and we discussed that. What is your sense now? What is your research showing? How far away are we from this third wave?
Well, yes, you're right. The last time we talked, this was towards the end of April, and we actually called a peak of the second wave to occur somewhere around May the 8th,
yes,
which was a fairly brave thing to do because nobody was believing at that point in time that the cases would peak. And as it turned out, our mathematical model, which is a set of nonlinear differential equation, they in fact came through and the peak was reached as we predicted, and the decay has also been following as we had predicted. So now if you want to predict the third wave, you have to look at some of the possible triggers. So the possible triggers would be the fact that those who were infected earlier and had some amount of resistance to reinfection would begin to lose that slowly over time. That's one thing one has to look at. The other one is what you mentioned, which is the possibility of yet another variant that is even more infectious than the Delta variant that caused our second wave. But to counterbalance that, we have vaccination now going. And the fact is that vaccination, even with one dose, brings down the risk of infection by about 30%, 40%, whatever, something like that. And it brings down the risk of serious infection by much more than that. And if you actually manage to administer 2 doses, then the risk of infection comes down still more. So based on all of these things, and assuming extremely conservative values, we predict that even in the absolute worst case, which we call the pessimistic scenario, we would expect to see the third wave peaking at about 150,000 cases, somewhere towards the middle of October or the end of October. In the intermediate and optimistic scenarios, the peak will occur at about the same time, but the value of the peak would be much, much lower, typically 50, 60,000 daily cases.
Okay.
And the last point, I'll just finish this and I'll finish. The last point is that unlike in the last wave, we do not expect the proportion of hospitalizations and deaths as a fraction of cases to be as high. So 50,000 cases does not mean 12% of the hospitalizations and 12% of the deaths like last time.
Okay. Dr. Prabhat Jha, would you agree with this analysis that, the third wave, it hits us in somewhere around September and peaks in October, or in August and peaks in September, but would be less damaging for India than the second wave was, whether it's the number of cases or even, hospital admissions and fatalities?
We simply don't know. I think useful models like our colleague has presented are important, but there are certainly no prediction models that can really reliably estimate. What we have to look at is what's the experience in other settings. So, for example, in Brazil, the third wave was bigger in terms of the numbers of people infected than the second wave, and that was our experience in Canada as well. And you have to remember that if there's still widespread deaths in India, which is the case, there's also widespread community transmission occurring. And it's on that basis that there's further growth. And that's important not just for predicting the total numbers of people that will get infected, but you also have to think about the health system capacity. We had the same problem in Canada. We never, what we say, decompressed our intensive care units between the second and third waves. We didn't get them down to 0 admissions. And India is in a similar situation. As a result, our third wave in Canada was much bigger in the demands on people in intensive care than was the second wave. And that's my worry about India. Now, it is true that the virus, in evolutionary biology terms, should be changing to become more infectious and less lethal. That, if it had a brain, that's the way it would get more customers. But we can't assume that even with a lower lethality, a much higher number of people infected could still overwhelm the healthcare system. So what I'm very much hoping that the Indian government and all governments will do is to share the plans with the public of how they will meet the inevitable acute care crisis, knowing the lessons from the second wave.
Yes, in fact, we are getting not very clear information on a large scale right now, but little bits and pieces. It is what we are collecting right now from the central government, individual states, and how they are preparing. A lot of it that they said started even as the second wave was fading off. But Dr. Vinita Bal, a lot of these predictions, while based on what we have seen and certain scientific models, don't factor in two very important things. One, that people have to still follow rules, which we don't seem to be doing already. And two, that the virus is still evolving and mutating. As we speak, there is so much conversation now happening about this Lambda variant.
Yes. So it is true that human behavior is unpredictable, and hence it's also linked currently now, with the economic activity, and that is also one reason why people are not really following the appropriate behavior, because if they don't go for the work, they won't get any money. As it is, there are fewer jobs available. So all of this is contributing to partly not paying enough attention to what are considered as, physical distancing behavior, masks, and so on and so forth. So that's one problem. And the variants, of course, I mean, you can call Delta, I mean, even people were talking very extensively about Delta Plus, but there were also other variants which had come up and have gone down. So we don't need to take every variant of concern as they are described with real serious concern until we see the pattern in which it is disseminating. So if there is a rapid small outbreak which is associated with with areas where the new variants are associated, then we need to move in much faster. And this I'm talking about situation in India, because the sampling of the sampling is not optimal. So sequencing that is happening in outbreaks which can be investigated are being done at a very suboptimal level. Unlike in UK, where every positive sample is getting sequenced, we are only doing sentinel sampling and sequencing. So it is going to take time, and I personally feel yes, the third wave will come because, one, appropriate behavior is not completely followed. Two, of course, there is a phenomenal shortage of the vaccine. And even if Dr. Vidyasagar says that by September or October there will be a peak, by that time, if you look at the vaccine coverage, currently the first dose is not even given to about 20%. Well, it is about 20%, 22% of the population. And we don't have capacity to increase it significantly. So by September, we are nowhere going to be close to 50% either. So that is going to influence the outcome very, very significantly. And I understand even one dose gives protection. I also agree with that. But still, the viral variants, vaccination coverage, and our appropriate or non-appropriate behavior all would contribute to the third wave. But I'm not a modeler or a mathematician who can predict this. Neither am I an astrologer who can predict that. So my point is, yes, we will face a third wave, maybe even a fourth wave, but I have no estimate to give when the waves would come our way.
Okay, but would you want to in any way, hazard a guess, or based on your own learning, say how intense would it be? Of course, one factor will be how many people are able to get some kind of vaccination. I mean, UK seems to be opening up now because a majority have got one shot and they feel safer about saying that, okay, at least there will be fewer hospitalizations now.
True. I mean, I wouldn't hazard a guess in terms of 2 months from now, 3 months from now. Right. No, I wouldn't do that.
Right.
But at the same time, what we need to think about, and I hope the current panic that I see in states like Maharashtra, because I live there, and a few other states also in India, where because of quote-unquote Delta Plus, there were again worries about it spreading, and hence again the restrictions were getting imposed. I'm just hoping that what crises we faced, which was phenomenal shortage of the beds and phenomenal shortage of oxygen, all of this compounded with the additional infection of mucormycosis, all of this is because of the poor health infrastructure. And whatever temporary infrastructure has been created to face the two waves, I hope it is not dismantled to such an extent that we will again be facing a similar crisis, the extent of which will depend on how many cases are there per day.
Fair enough. I think all of us, will agree on one part, which is that this conversation and any kind of study, research, findings, discussions that we do refer to is from the point of view of how do we prepare ourselves better for the future. How do governments prepare? What should our policies be? What do people need to know as they plan their lives? What do businesses need to know, Professor Vidyasagar, as they plan their second half of this year in terms of expansion or opening or saving money? And everything that you experts can tell us will be helpful in us planning that. So what is it that you would tell the government or advise the government basis your own research and findings in terms of preparing for the third wave? Professor Vidyasagar.
So what specifically do you want us to say about advice about opening up? Is that the question?
Preparing for third wave, whether it's about opening up and should we slow down on the opening up, or step up on the speed of our healthcare preparation, or whether it's step up on the surveillance, because there are newer variants that we need to watch out for as well.
Okay, so that's a good question. You see, in terms of the newer variants, I do agree with Professor Bal that the more samples we take, the more sequencing we do, the better it is going to be. So that will give us the head start that we need to prepare for a possible third wave as and when it comes. In terms of opening up and slowing down, things like that, one of the interesting things that has happened in the second wave was the following. During the first wave, we had a coordinated nationwide lockdown policies, which were formulated centrally and communicated to the states. In the second wave, it was left to individual states to formulate their own lockdown policies, with the end result that we had a wide variety of lockdown policies implemented, and we as the modelers had an opportunity to compare and contrast different lockdown policies as implemented by different states. And one conclusion that emerges very clearly is that a gentle lockdown that allows most normal commercial activity to go on, but prevent large gatherings, prevent the congregation of crowds, that kind of a thing, is far more effective in containing the spread of the pandemic than what I would call a total lockdown, where people are forced to squeeze all their commercial activity into just a few hours per day. And it's not surprising if you think about it. If you say that lockdown is every time between any time other than 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., for example, the whole city is going to be on the streets in those hours. So obviously that's not a good thing to do. So in terms of preparing, I'm not quite sure that we have actually built up so much infrastructure that needs to be dismantled. I think what happened is that by the time we managed to get some infrastructure in place, the second wave was kind of ebbing on its own because it was running out of potential victims. So it's not clear to me that if we had a similar requirement today, that we're in any better shape to meet it than we were back in April, May. So this time, I think we have to be a lot more proactive and create the capacity beforehand. And also what I would like to call a rapid response team. Our simulations allow the governments to get a heads up of about 3 to 4 weeks that a third wave is imminent so that they can prepare and also make reliable estimates of the magnitude and extent of the third wave. So call me back when you think that there's a third wave and I'll tell you what our model is telling you.
Okay, we will definitely do that. But good to have you here today. And I know a few of our colleagues spoke with you and the insights were so interesting that I did want to share some of those insights with our viewers as well. But there's one other aspect that you have spoken about, and I want Prabha Jha also to come in on this, and which is the impact of how much vaccination we are able to do and how that, Dr. Jha, will protect the population. Now, in comparison to what's happened in other nations, India's pace of vaccination as a percentage has still been slow because there's so many of us. How does that place us by the time, by September or August, end of September, by the time the third wave hits us? We will at least by then hopefully have, 50 crore people who would be vaccinated.
The required vaccination rate in India is roughly 1 crore people a day. Yeah. And India is not hitting more than about 40% of that. So, and China was able to vaccinate the equivalent 1 crore or 10 million people a day. So now that would require a huge logistic effort, but I think it is possible with greater prominence given to trying to get the vaccines delivered as widely. The other part, which is very important to note, is India fought the second wave very much with limited and publicly available data. I would hope that the third wave battle will be data driven, very much data driven. So take a very practical example. Everyone who gets tested or gets a vaccine has their details, their Aadhaar card or others documented. If all of those data, and along with death data, were available and put on a website, anonymized, of course, so you don't identify individuals, then you'd be able to see what are the hotspots of India and where is action needed in particular. And that kind of data-driven approach is very much what we had to rely on in Canada, because we also had a shortage of vaccines. So what did we do? We said, well, the second dose is going to be prioritized in neighborhoods where we think there is the Delta variant. That was very explicitly done. So given the shortage of vaccines, data are particularly useful to be able to prioritize where vaccines are distributed or extra vaccines are made available. And they'll also help prioritize the mitigation efforts that Dr. Rawal mentioned as well. There needs to be an accounting of what is the supply of oxygen tanks, of beds, of nurses, of healthcare staff across the various parts. People need to know that before the pandemic, so that it's the public confidence is there on what to do and how to deal with an inevitable third wave. Without data, India will not be able to walk out of the pandemic.
Yes, in fact, Professor Vidyasagar, to you this question very quickly, since you've worked with mathematical projections as well. Does the absence of data or accurate data make your task difficult, or does it beyond a point not matter because the trend would still largely be the same?
I think that the main data that we wished we had, which would have allowed us to combat the second wave better, again, go back to what Professor Bal was saying, more sequencing would have led to an earlier identification of the presence of the Delta variant and the fact that it was the driver behind our second wave. If we had 3-4 weeks heads up on that, we would have been able to make far more reliable predictions. I somehow don't think that the absence of data is as acute as people are making it out to be. The case data is available in pretty good detail. The number of vaccinations is available in very good detail. But the sequence information and also demographic information on vaccinations and people who tested positive, that would have helped us to some extent. But let me just say one last thing and I'll stop. Interestingly, if you look at the demographic variation of the seropositivity, that is what fraction of Indians have been exposed to the disease and have antibodies, it doesn't show a whole lot of disparity across age groups, even including children. The fraction of children who have antibodies is anywhere between 80% to 110% of adults in various serological studies across India. So I think that if we have good sequencing, that I think to me is the key step in forecasting the next wave accurately.
Okay, yes, good sequencing one and good COVID appropriate behavior as the other one. I'm a little short on time, but very quickly to Vinita Bal as well. One thing that you will watch out for as a data point or a trend that will warn us about when the third wave gets us and in what manner?
Difficult to say. This is because it is not one point that will tell us. It is multifactorial, and we will have to take into account what is in different parts of the country. The wave or outbreaks, whatever you call it, will spread differently. Rural India is different from urban metropolitan India, where in rural India the second wave was much more strong. First wave was much stronger in the metros. So also second wave. But now the disease is also spreading to rural areas. So it is very difficult to predict which part of the country are we going to talk about, which gets reported, and which are the areas which actually will be hit by the outbreaks first. So it is biology, and it is simply not it is epidemiology, it is virology, it is biology, it is immunology, and it is really, really multifactorial. And that is why sometimes the modelers go wrong, because every possible causative factor cannot and is not taken into account for a variety of reasons. So
Sure.
I'm afraid I'm not going to give you an answer.
Yeah, I know, I understand. In fact, policies make a difference as well. To what extent are you able to implement your containment measures and your movement and restrictions in your movements? I mean, if Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand holiday destinations are not able to get a handle on all of the North Indians who are running to the hills right now to escape the heat wave, it could become a bigger problem even before September hits us. And same goes even in Maharashtra, and the way people are escaping for the weekends, this revenge travel, as it is being called. And this part, viewers, is really up to us. This part about following COVID appropriate behavior, wearing a mask and maintaining our distance is extremely important. The second wave has peaked out. COVID hasn't gone anywhere. We may be vaccinated, but the virus can still affect us, even if it is not with the same intensity. It will still impact us. So that hasn't changed. Even if we want to step out, we still need to follow the same norms. What we collectively do as a country and as people will actually decide what our next big challenge and how big a challenge it will be. Think about that. Thank you so much for joining us on this conversation.